Hello and welcome to the Gallant View podcast for our Premier League show. My name is Mason Stewart and I'll be your host as always. Please give us a like and subscribe, be much appreciated. With me tonight, talking things all Premier League, starting with Jamie. How are you, Jamie?
Mason, thanks very much for having me back on, mate. I'm doing good. Nice little win at the weekend. So happy to be back and talk of football.
Yeah, me and Johnny said you'll be back.
I bet he does.
How are you, Johnny, anyway?
Good, mate. Good evening to yourself and Jamie. Running out of games. We're running out of games, lads.
We are. We've got two more weeks to go, boys, and there's plenty to talk about as always. Jamie, let's start off with West Ham. Because they got beat 5-0 comfortably at the weekend by Chelsea. Could have been more, and that's being kind. But the news has followed that David Moyes will be leaving after, I'd say, a successful spell there. There was obviously a lot of rumours since January that he was going to be away. That's been confirmed. And Big Jules, previously at Wolves, looks set to be their new manager. What's your thoughts on Moyes leaving and Lopetegui following him?
Do you know what? We've been saying all season that West Ham fans are a fickle bunch because they've been given so much criticism to the team, but they were sitting, I think at the time they were sitting 7th, looking to push on, But if you look at it now, they're not sitting 7th. I think they've dropped to 9th. They're on a really, really poor form. I think I read a stat after the game at the weekend, and I think that's the 5th time this season they've been beaten by 5 goals. That's brutal, no matter which way you take it. So I think it was inevitable that Moyes was moving on. And I think, do you not think the narrative's changed recently, though? Because I think the last 2 weeks or last 3 weeks, it's always, I think about, do you remember they lost to Liverpool in the Cup? And then they lost to, somebody went to West Ham and beat them 4 or 5 goals, I think it was. Was it maybe Brighton or something like that?
Fulham,
Fulham, was it? And what you were getting was, West Ham fans need to be, they don't know when the bread's buttered, if you like. But the narrative's probably changed in the last 2 weeks, and it's now turned to empathy for David Moyes' situation. And what I mean by that is that West Ham have been openly quoting new managers in the media. And I just think, see, if he wasn't British, I don't think this narrative would be, happening. I think it'd be very much, he's going to go away, take a break, and he'll get another job somewhere else. The struggle that you've got is that obviously David Moyes has won them this trophy that they did last season, which was an absolute godsend for any West Ham fan. But you're sitting now looking at them. They've got 2 games left in the season. They're sitting 9th, which is no terrible results, but they're getting heavy defeats, and it's the mannerism of the defeats that you can't say the riddle with injuries, because during these defeats they've still got Bowen, Paqueta, Alvarez, Kudos, Antonio's playing again. You could argue that maybe one of the central defenders is maybe out, but it's still pretty much his best 11. And I mean, we're not even talking about the 50 million Calvin Phillips is still sitting on the bench. There's obviously just something not right at the moment, and it became worrying, I think, last week when I read that the sporting director had said that he's no longer going to go into the dressing room, which tells you that there's obviously some kind of fallout happening there. And we've said all season that there's obviously a discontent between the two, because he wanted to go one direction with his transfers and Moyes wanted to go another. So I think if you look at it on reflection now, it's probably right that he moves on. I'm just not convinced it's Big Jules is the man to take them on. The Wolves' job aside, he's had plenty of jobs and not really got far with them. Is it? If I remember rightly, was he not the guy who was in Real Madrid for only a few games? He didn't really get
14
there. He got 14 games and he got booted out. So it's like we're not talking about the guy in charge of Emery. If you like, Emery's obviously well travelled, but he's got all his trophies behind him. Lopetegui's not that, and it does probably leave a sour taste on the reports of how Lopetegui left Wolves. We was unhappy. People will counter that and say he was given false promises. but he did it very publicly in the media, which never goes down well. So yeah, I'm kind of on the fence of Moyes, but I do think it's probably the right thing for him to move on. They can't keep putting in these displays the way they have. I just don't think they'll be getting any better next season, because I think they're going to find it hard to keep hold of some of the superstars that they've got right now.
That's the big with the change that Moyes has sort of implemented in that West Ham squad. He's got them playing a certain way. I think there's 7 players out of contract at West Ham as well. And don't get me wrong, I went through the list yesterday, and there's a lot there that naturally need to move on. And I think if Moyes would have gone last summer, I actually think he should have gone last summer. I wanted him to go selfishly, because I think that no matter what he done,
was that more to finish on a high though, or was
it was, and I just think that he was a little bit underappreciated. Really, I know they had a really poor sort of Premier League season, but you take a trophy over that. As long as you don't go down, I think West Ham winning a trophy, that's the first time many of supporters, generations of supporters, that would have seen sort of West Ham win a trophy, and where he took them. I just think once they had a couple of bad results, like they have, that Johnnie you just spoke about, this was always going to come. And I think it's turned from a real praise for David Moyes to quite nasty. I was at the Arsenal game, and don't get me wrong, they were terrible. Arsenal smashed them, but it was nasty. And I thought his time's up here.
I think the bit I heard, I went to watch the Liverpool game in a local pub, so I was only listening to it on the radio, and I think they said that there was West Ham fans leaving after 40 minutes because it was that poor, and you just think, here we go again. So,
once that happens, that's it, isn't it? Johnnie, what's your thoughts on this, mate? I know you've been on here and praised Moyes at times, like myself, and probably looked at it a little bit like West Ham fans are probably a little bit unrealistic. I think they have been at times. What's your thoughts on the Lopetegui appointment as well? Because like Jamie says, I'm not sure if this is the right appointment. Reminds me a little bit of the Pellegrini appointment that West Ham made just before Moyes, where it was an absolute bin fire. Listen, it could go the other way, you know what I mean? But just my opinion, I think it feels a little bit more like that.
I don't know if I would say I can understand where West Ham fans are coming from, right? I do get it. I think they're OTT, because they were very, very fast to smash that button. I mean, we had rumblings of this before the season even started. I mean, basically, they hadn't even cleaned the European trophy out for the beer. They just went straight into going for Moyes, which was ridiculous. I think I'm right in saying that he's brought them European football for the last 3 years. Isn't it? Yeah, 3 consecutive. And obviously, he's bought the first trophy. I mean, I was looking back the other day there just to see how far back for a major honour. I mean, you're having to go back to horse and cart to see a decent trophy. It's a bit ridiculous. I think the last one, the most modern prior, was the Inter Total Cup. The young team that listen to this won't even know what that is. So yeah, I think they definitely are. Probably the best way I could put it is unappreciative of David Moyes. I think he's been hugely underappreciated. I do understand getting disgruntled when you're seeing your team play a certain way, but I think they do have a higher expectation of what they can deliver. And we said this pretty much a huge chunk of the season is you have to be really careful for what you wish for, you know, because it has a huge bar for a case of you reap what you sow. Obviously, time will tell. I don't know, but the way it's been going recently, the fixtures dropping, the form dropping, and them looking so defeated, we don't know how long they've known that Moyes is leaving, because he might have told them a while back he wasn't signing that contract, and you know this would be his last season. That can change heads, that can turn form, and if there's been disgruntled between Moyes and the board, and the players are seeing it again, that can create rifts. I think West Ham have dealt with it really, really poorly. I mean, we knew about it days and days before an actual official announcement. I mean, that's just obscene. Just get the news out before people start breaking it. You know, I think it's unfair on Moyes, and it just creates more friction towards a man. So, yeah, I think they dealt with it poorly. Look at me, I pretty much echo what you have said. I don't buy into him. He's won nothing, and everybody's went, with the exception of that season at Wolves, he's been sacked. Or the old-fashioned amicable agreement, which means we're going to sack you, but we don't want you to get the word sacking on your CV, kind of thing. So yeah, the Real Madrid one obviously was a parody. It was only there a couple of months, and then ended up they got hammered by Barcelona in the El Clasico. I think it was 5-1, and that's when he got sacked. I think his first game he conceded 4 goals, and that was I think there's only 2 managers that have ever done that have went to Real Madrid, conceded 4 goals in their first game. So yeah, I'm not sold on that one at all, mate. I think, like you say, there's a high bar for that to fail, and if it does, I won't have much sympathy for them. I really won't. They do have a decent squad. They have some huge talent there, as Jamie just touched on, but I think the only thing that might save them with certain players, like, for example, like the Bowen, even Kudus and whoever else you want to put in there, that there's so many teams struggling with financial fair play, so it would probably have to be a bid from elsewhere. So they might dodge a bullet somewhat, but yeah, I think it's a one of these manager ones that it was an eyebrow raiser, mate. I think that would be a fair assessment.
I absolutely agree, and just Jamie, just to sort of finish on Moyes, you got to remember he actually took the job the first time they was in trouble, and he done really well to sort of steer them out. Yeah.
He was chased out exactly the same.
Yeah, and he's been treated exactly the same. I actually listened to his press conference from 2 months ago, and he said he said that he actually had a contract to sign, but I think he's protecting the ball there. I actually think he's when you listen to that sort of press conference, I think he's protecting people upstairs, which is, considering how they've treated him, I think is deserves a lot of credit for that. But just to finish up there, Jamie, on it, Paqueta I think's got an £85 million buyout. There'll be plenty of rumours about him and Man City, even Liverpool as well. That's been another club mentioned. Just with the amount of players that West Ham need to sign, I said there's 7 players out of contracts. Don't see any sort of staying. There's a lot to do already, isn't there? And Johnny's right. There is some really good players sort of in the forward area, but if you actually strip through that squad, I know they haven't got Europe next season, which will probably be good for the squad that is looking thin there, but it's a big job for him already, because the expectation is just it's not going to stay where it is. It's going that way.
You said straight away that they've, this is before we talk about refreshing the squad. They've got 7 at first team contracts out of date. They're ultimately either going to have to reback them or bring in other players. They didn't fill. They've got to send Calvin Phillips back. He was brought in. Well, he probably wasn't brought in, but Fornells went out in January. Calvin Phillips wasn't a replacement for him, but that was one in, one out, if you like. Calvin Phillips is going to go back to West Ham will not be signing him, regardless of who the manager is, in my opinion. I think Kudus has gone because he's got a transfer, buyout clause that's pretty much already in every media outlet. Paqueta, as you said, Man City pulled it pretty much on the last day of the window at the beginning of the season to do with this irregular betting pattern that hasn't been fixed yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if somebody comes back in for him. I think he's had arguably a better season this season than he did the season before. Jared Bowen's probably the one that's caught himself in a bit of a pickle because he's obviously a Moyes kind of player, and I think he signed an 8-year contract at the beginning of the season. That's mental to think that he's now pretty much that committed person. Ward-Prowse has just signed. The boy Alvarez could potentially make a move. So you're talking about they're going to need, theoretically, 10, 11 players, realistically, as squad players as well. Now you're talking about what Forrest did at the beginning of last season. And you're already bringing in a manager that is known for being vocal, shall we say, if he's discontent, if it doesn't go where he's matched. I think West Ham are going to be nowhere near where they are right now in terms of, not a finished article, because that's not right to say because there's obviously gap, but in terms of how they play, I don't even see what pattern they're going to come up with next season, because they're going to take, I particularly expect Paqueta to go, Kudus to go, some of their more flairier players could potentially move on, and you just think, that's a tough job, anybody going in there.
I think I think when he left Wolves at the back end, it was because he wanted more money to enforce that squad, and they couldn't do
The
it
financial
because
fair
you
play, didn't
remember, they were in a lot of bother. So that was
Yeah.
pretty much why I left.
Yeah, he thought he was getting money from the Ruben Neves deal. Remember, Neves went on to Saudi Arabia, didn't he? The Neves lad that went to Man City, they lost the other Portuguese lad to Saudi Arabia, and who was it? Matinho left. He got none of that money because they couldn't afford to go out and get anybody. So
it will be interesting. And Johnny, we've obviously just spent 15 minutes talking about West Ham, but got to remember Chelsea here. We're good again. We got a good version of Chelsea, and another 5 goals. I thought Conor Gallagher's playing really well, and I think he must listen to this podcast because I think I've dug him out a couple of times and he's responded well. But he's playing really well. Another cracking goal as well.
I just can't get my head around. There's folks still doubting the lad, mate. Even just as a football fan, stripping away who he's playing for. If I see a player that's on another team that's doing well, I would just hold my hands up, and say well done. I mean, Palmer he's a talent. I mean, there's nothing more I can really add to him. He's consistent. He's doing it week in, week out. The one I did mark again was, I've called it the last couple of pods, told you to keep an eye on Madueke. If they can rein him down and get, the hothead away from him, that he's a talented lad, and he was brilliant at the weekend again. He was involved in the first goal directly, scored the third, and then assisted the fourth. Even Gallagher was getting on the goals. Another one who, if you give him the rein, can do damage. I think if they give him that wee bit extra, we've seen it the last few weeks. Such a good hitter of the ball as well. But they were really good, mate. And they never gave West Ham any time to settle, and they've not been doing that. They were out the traps. They've been notoriously slow at starters. At the weekend, there was none of that. So, yeah, West Ham were off it. I think it was a mix of both. West Ham were rotten, but Chelsea were really good. I mean, they've went for having one of the worst seasons to being in with a serious shout to grabbing a European place. Obviously, it needs a wee bit of hand elsewhere, but there is still a shout at it. So, I mean, it's not been a great season, but like I said at the start, mate, people have to accept it's a transition. That's exactly what it is. He's got a decent squad of young talent, but he needs time to try and do it. So I stick by what I said, getting rid of like Poch is just the wrong choice. Give him the time and see how things work out next season. Delighted with the result, mate. And by the way, Jackson with 2 goals. I nearly shat myself.
Johnny, can I ask you? So I've just been looking there. Fernandes hasn't played for the last 3 games. I think he got injured in the Arsenal game. Chelsea look massively different without him.
What did I say? Remember I said they need to try and drop one to try it.
Casado, Gallagher have pretty much helped each other out. And then obviously they're feeding into the rest of them around them. There's just something that I just noticed, like the last 3 games, Fernandes has been injured. He went off, I think, in the Arsenal game, only that was the last game.
It's a hernia, mate. He ruptured the hernia.
Yeah, but they look more contained.
I think they had too much in there, mate. Too many holding midfielders, and they had them all playing deep. It was too much. It just basically throttled any kind of threat going forward. So I agree. I think they're a better team. I think you could have probably done the same with Casado. Left Enzo, and if you left Casado out, you probably would have seen a similar result because they're both similar players. But no, there's definitely a notice, mate. We could all see there is a difference. They have looked a wee bit. I mean, they're still lacking consistency, but they definitely carry more threat and look more of a team.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't put it past Chelsea. I think, as you said there, Johnny, they're going to need a little bit of luck elsewhere, results to go for them to get Europa League. But I think if they did get Europa League, I think it would be from where they were, it'd be a decent end, wouldn't it?
But even Mason, you look at it aside, they're currently sitting level with Manchester United on 54 points and sitting 7th. They finished 7th. That's a tremendous season compared to where they were. And I know we go back to the spend £1 billion, shouldn't be finishing 7th, but considering where they were,
because you said there the amount of inconsistency and the amount of defeats they've sort of had this season as well. To get 7, I'd be delighted with that.
Yeah, I don't think it's something they can count on. I think it'd be a nice bonus, but I just think, like I said, I think this season was a write-off to start with. It was really just about putting building blocks in place. What I will say, sorry, I don't know why you dragged the arse with this game, but Bowen hits the bar 3 times in that game early.
Yeah.
That's the small margins of the game. 1 or 2 of them go in. It's a different game.
Yeah, it is. It is, and yeah, Bowen's been putting them away any lately. So, but yeah, take nothing away from Chelsea. Jamie, that does lead us nicely on to. I want to try and we praised Palace. I think me and Johnny a couple of weeks ago, and we'll do that again. But we've got to talk about Man United and Erik ten Hag. I don't know where to start. I had my notes here, and I'm just looking at them, and I'm just like, they're just an absolute mess. That's their 13th Premier League loss this season, and they've conceded 81 goals in all competitions,
which is a record on both accounts for Manchester United in the Premier League. Absolute scandalous. There was some, as you said, there's loads of stats floating about, but and I think for as much as he gets so hyperventilated, Jamie Carragher's breakdown of him last night on Monday Night Football is actually pretty good, because he doesn't just say, this person's not doing it for the manager. He actually points out where he feels they're being coached, they're being told to do the wrong things. I think they showed a clip the other night, and last night, sorry, and it was like the Burnley game. 2 minutes into the second half, you're chasing the game, and Diego Dallo's up top, and then the ball comes in behind you, and they've got the conceding an attack. He did really well with that, because actually that's probably what when we say Man United just don't look organised, that's what we're talking about. It's not the fact that they're losing games. It's just that from defence to straight to up front, they just look completely disjointed. But what I seen a stat like this morning, actually, when I was doing a bit of revision, and it says that Manchester United have conceded 317 goal attempts, or instances in the box, since January the 1st. Sheffield United have conceded 297, and Luton have conceded 290. West Ham has conceded 308. So all these teams that we're talking about are having bad seasons. Manchester United are conceding more chances than any other team in the league right now. That can only end in one way, and I think you've seen that last night. Manchester United, let's put a sticker on it. Manchester United have got injury troubles, but so does everybody else. Yeah. So I don't care the volume of it. Liverpool had to do it 2 seasons ago. We were playing with 3 midfielders and a centre-back because we had that many injuries. Nobody gave us a bargain. I'm not doing the same for Manchester United. They've got some key players missing, but this is still Manchester United we're talking about. Johnny Evans last night was brought in to do a job. I seen one report that said Johnny Evans didn't actually pass his fitness test yesterday morning, but Ten Hag asked him to play because they were so screwed for bodies, and he played through. So straight away, Evans is more than likely not going to make the next match if he's playing through an injury last night. So they're putting themselves at risk again. But then to make Casemiro the captain, and was arguably at fault for 2 of the 4 goals last night, not to give him the ball away, but just terrible defending, terrible attempting of tackling. I love this stat that came out last night. Casemiro was dribbled past 8 times in last night's game. That's 6 more times than Virgil van Dijk has been all season. Like, this is the kind of levels that they're pulling these stats out of. Everywhere you look, there's a stat about Manchester United at the moment. That tells me Ten Hag cannot be the man to take them forward. It can't be. I don't care what people say about the injuries. Even when he's got a full team, you don't see the same kind of progression that you would expect to see. They were woeful last night. And the fact that Palace had Elise and Eze, I mean, me and Johnny were speaking before it. We had completely expected a Palace win. But you were probably talking, if you were predicted, you're probably going like maybe a 2-0. Not 4-0. Could have been 5, could have been 6 at some point. And the lad Mateta's goal was an absolute rocket. And Nana shouldn't be getting beaten at his near post like that. It's just these little things about Manchester United that just seem way, way, way off it,
Yeah, Johnny, Jamie covers a lot there, and he's absolutely spot on with it all.
Taking the boot right in.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think it's well deserved.
I held back. I've got loads more here. I held back. I'm talking about Anthony that got hauled off because he was waving his arms at the rest of his teammates, and his manager's like, "No, you're off." Do you know what I mean? Like, it's and what was it? I joked obviously before we did the pod. Ten Hag were the most entertaining team in the league. That was 2 weeks ago, and entertaining for the wrong reasons is the best way to put it.
Technically, he's not wrong. Sorry, Mason. What you got to say, mate?
No, go for it, Johnny. Go for it.
Just, I can kind of devil's advocate what Jamie's just said a tiny bit. Now, I agree with everything about how poor they've been. Right? I'm not going to argue that. And I'm not going to argue the fact that even when you add those players that are out and bring them back in, they are still off it. I agree with that. What I will say is the injuries, especially solely defensively, have to have an effect. Right? They have to. Right? They went into last night's game where the young lad Kamwala, he's out. They've got Lindelof out, Maguire out, Martinez out, Shaw out, Varane is out. So basically, they've made a defence of Johnnie Evans, who I don't know. He's probably older than my oldest uncle, right? We've got Dallo and we've got Wan-Bissaka. So you've got two wing backs, right? And one of them's a liability. You've got Evans, who is, let's just say, he's at the twilight end of his career, and they've stuck Casemiro in there. Casemiro runs like he's towing 6 caravans, and John Evans ain't much faster. You've got two incredibly slow centre-halves in there, and one of them's not a centre-half. He's not even close to a centre-half. And then they're coming up against some of the best prospects in the league, and you've got a Mateta who's been firing something awful recently. Big, powerful, strong forward who's going to run you into the ground. It was a recipe for disaster. So I think, although, like I say, I agree with what Jamie's saying. I do get it. I think they've been awful. I just think that has to have an effect, and that had to play a part. It did play a part last night. Of course it did. So yeah. And then obviously they're missing Bruno as well. That was a big miss for them. I think as much as he's not the most likeable chap, he's a fantastic player. And he's a big part of what they do. If he's missing from the middle of the park, they just fall to pieces, and then add all that defensive nightmare. So yeah. But I mean, they have been awful, mate. It's been a subpar season. Even when they've been dragging points out, I said this a few weeks ago. Remember I said that I have no idea how they are, where they are in the league. Even though that sounds silly, when you watch them, it's bizarre. And that was without the injuries. So, yeah, I mean, they were rotten. Palace were excellent. But you've seen the space. If you watch the game, Olise was just waltzing wherever he wanted. There was no challenge. There was nothing. And majority of the Palace team done that. So, yeah, I think there was other factors, mate. And I didn't want to take anything away from the Mateta strike. I did watch it again the day because my first thought was Onana near post, like Jamie said, but the power behind that shot, I think it would have took his hands off.
Yeah, it was a great goal, and Elise heavily linked with Man United as well. But I think he'd be, considering where they're at right now, I think it'd be mad to go there. I think he can go get a better move than that. And what a job Glasner's done, by the way, going in at Palace. I think all three of us were. I think, to be fair, we were quite complimentary of what he achieved at Frankfurt and at Freiburg. I think his other club. But he's gone in there, and I think he's had 3 defeats, 5 wins, and 3 draws, I think. So it's a really solid start compared to where they were with Hodgson. And there was a lot of, I think Palace fans a little bit unsure where the football club was going. But he's got off to a great start. And if he can get his signings right in the summer, then that will be the key for Palace now, keeping players fit, keeping players there, and they're not adding to that. But it's exciting times for the Eagles, that's for sure. Jamie, coming to you with Liverpool side of things. Me and Johnny will touch over the Spurs side of things, but back to winning ways. We know title's not over just yet, but it would take a bigger miracle than I think Rangers going to Parkhead and winning 3-0. Than it would do than Liverpool winning this title, but back to winning ways for now at least.
Yeah, I think I joked in the chat last night that if Arsenal and Man City lose every game left in the season and Liverpool win the last 2, then we could leapfrog them and win the title. But I think going into the game, I didn't know what to expect because Spurs had been spanked 3 games in a row before it. That you're thinking they've got to turn up at some point. It'd be sod's law that they turn up at Anfield, after we'd had a poor result the week before in the draw. But Liverpool actually Liverpool did Ange Ball to them. That's probably the best way to put it. We attacked them. We pressed high. We didn't give them space, and we choked them in the first half. They were 2-0 down, 3-0 down. They didn't look as though they were getting anywhere near it. I think in the first half that Tottenham were probably one of the. I would say they arguably looked better. And do you remember when they played the highlight against Chelsea and they got battered off Chelsea? I think they arguably looked better than that than what they did in the first half against Liverpool. Liverpool had a few changes themselves. Cody Gakpo likes to come play deep, but he was all over the place. Harvey Elliott was getting on the ball, and I think one of the big key things in the last, in that game was that if you notice, Trent and Robertson have not been transitioning into the midfield as much. What if you think about Liverpool in the last couple of years, they've not been doing this hybrid midfielder. What they've been doing is Trent will play the ball to Salah, and then he'll overlap Salah on the outside, and then Salah will play him in, and kind of that, they've got that partnership, and Robertson does the same with Diaz. Sunday, they did exactly that. The amount of times Trent got the ball in, Harvey Elliott got the ball in, and Mo was getting on the end of quite a lot of them. He looked up for it as well. Mo's obviously had a bit of a kick in the backside about how last week went, with the touchline incident and stuff. That he kind of got back to his normal ways. You could tell that Emerson Royale just did not want any piece of it at all, and that's the bit that when we're talking about Tottenham and how Tottenham are approaching it. I know you guys are going to touch on it, but I think there's going to be some questions now starting being asked of how Ange's setting up, because I think anybody in the way would see how Liverpool were going to play against them, but they put a right-footed right back at left back up against Mo Salah. They've got two left-footed players in the centre of defence, and Mickey van de Ven. You would arguably push him out left back, which is more natural, and bring one of the other players into the centre. I think Ange's got this method of he wants to play a certain way and sod everything else, but he'll just keep playing it that way. And I think that was very evident on Sunday, and Liverpool just exploited it. When they get exploited and they shut down your tactic, you've got to have a plan B. You've got to adapt. You've got to do something different. He did do something different, but it was probably more Liverpool did something different. We made two changes around about the 70-minute mark. I think it was Robertson and Endo who went off, and Endo had been brilliant. Robertson had been brilliant. We brought the young lad Bjatic on and Joe Gomez. We took a while to take a shape, but they reacted and brought on Richarlison, and he managed to get, shall we say, 5-10 minutes worth of piercing runs in behind, and they managed to get themselves 2 goals, and you just thought, ooh. But I think that was more Liverpool changing than it was that Tottenham were changing. But yeah, Liverpool were worth the win, needed the 3 points. It was good to get that one over the line, because I think there was a bit of a bad taste when it came to Tottenham about how the first game went early in the season, with the VAR call and stuff like that. It just Liverpool just needed to put 3 points on the board, but thankfully we managed to get a good win out of it. And a big shout out to Harvey Elliott. That's him, like 103 appearances now for Liverpool, and he scores an absolute pearler. He doesn't do it by halves. He always scores goals like that when he bangs them in. So well chuffed for the lad, even if he does have, as John calls it, bachelor's noodles for hair. Yeah, I got that in for you, Johnny, because I knew you were going to come with that.
Johnny, there's a lot there. I think Jamie's right. From obviously knows the Liverpool side more than any of us will. But Johnny, I want to ask you about Spurs, and I suppose we've sort of defended Postecoglou a lot this season. I think he's done well. He's done well really to get them where they are, considering I think where they were when he took over. But that's 4 defeats in a row now. They're conceding goals for fun. I think if Liverpool could have handpicked any team to play, apart from obviously the obvious in the bottom lot, I think Spurs would have been one that have picked to go and get a win, because defensively they look all over the place, and there is a lot of noise starting to build around Postecoglou. How fickle football fans are. There is a lot of Spurs fans now going, what's going on here, and he needs to get a plan B.
Yeah. Something mentioned a few times on the pod, mate. We've discussed it. I don't mind the playing out for the back and always looking to play football when the opportunity is there. Too many clubs, managers force it for 90 minutes. And if you're playing the wrong opponent, it does not work. Vincent Kompany, if you're listening, you have to be one of the worst for it. They don't have the personnel to do it. Players are not comfortable enough on the ball. We've seen it at Spurs. We've seen it at the weekend. I mean, they were playing again. Like, I've always flagged the best two pressing teams for me in the league is, say three is City, Arsenal and Liverpool. On the day, you will not get a minute to settle. They will push you as high up as your own box and they will keep you there. And they're trying to play out using their keeper in that situation. It's just absolute bedlam. So they were just giving the ball away, recycling it over and over, and it was just wave after wave of Liverpool attack. And it went like that for the majority of the game. It was Spurs got a couple of goals back late on. It was a bit like the game previously. They were token goals, but they were not in that game. And we've seen, like you said, we've seen that for a few weeks now. I believe that is 13 conceded in 4 games. Yeah. So, yeah.
17 after the Liverpool game.
Right, that must include... All right, I've not got in front of me. I'll not argue. Okay. But, yeah, so they are leaking goals for fun, mate. Liverpool needed that win at the weekend badly. Get themselves back on track. But from a Spurs point of view, it's another slapping, really. There's a few things that annoyed me. I don't know, when Richarlison gets his goal, the ball goes in the net. Now he goes to get the ball, and I think it was Alisson kicks it away. Now, if that's you sprint after that ball and get straight back to the centre circle. He runs away. He wheels away and celebrates a goal at 4-1 down. Honest, I've not really got words for that. So, yeah, listen, I still say stick by. I like Ange. I think he's a good guy for me. I think he needs to learn. I think he needs to adapt, absolutely. And he has to come up with something better, because when you're one of these teams that play out constantly and you're such a stickler to, playing that way, same way we've seen it with Burnley, teams will figure you out incredibly fast, because it's just one blueprint to beat you. High press, don't let them settle. They're going to give you, they're going to make mistakes. And that's happening with Spurs week in and week out. They're getting found out. They're getting figured out. But I don't think there should be any noise about it. I think they were similar to Chelsea. Losing Kane was massive for them. A lot of changes in that club close season, trying to find their feet, pretty much a new era for them. So give them the close season, see how they look, let him bring some of his own players in, and then see how they get into next season. But absolutely, he needs to come up with something else when he's against certain opponents.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that'll be one. Transfers, I think, will play a big part in that, and his recruitment. But as you said, Johnny, coming up with that plan B and something different might be the difference, him being a success at Spurs or not. Jen's gonna sort of run through both games here, because I feel like we've gone over the same pattern when talking about Man City and Arsenal. Again, I think the pattern's repeating even just for the results. Jamie, I'll start with Arsenal, a 3-0 win at home to Bournemouth. Again, pretty straightforward. The second goal was crucial here for Arsenal, but I had a conversation with someone at the weekend who said that I think it was a little bit harsh in saying that Arsenal blew the opportunity, even if they win the remainder of their games. In my opinion, I think Arsenal have done as well as they could without a proper number 9 here. And they've pushed City all the way, I believe. But there's still a chance for them. There's still a couple games to go. But what did you make of them at the weekend?
You were right. The first thing you said, it's the same old Arsenal. They manufacture these penalties and they get them given. I can't get how they get away with that one. That penalty that was given was scandalous. I think he absolutely manufactures that. It's not a natural chance, if you like. But for some reason, they're getting away with it. What I was really impressed with, there was a couple of times Solanke broke through the defences, and I think it was Gabriel had kind of mixed it up and lost, and Solanke was going through one-on-one, but Saliba mopped it up. They are obviously a unit at the moment of how well they're playing, and Ben Waite's been obviously part of that. They've changed the left back multiple times, but those central three have been brilliant for the majority of the season. What I have been surprised at is probably Declan Rice. He obviously came with a big tag, and we always knew about what he could do from a defensive point of view. But from an attacking point of view, he's actually been really brilliant this season. He's got himself a few goals this season. He's got himself quite a few assists. I'd heard he'd got this in his locker from people at West Ham. It was just the way he was being played in more of a defensive setup. But again, he's actually been really good for them. You are right; they still do lack that number 9. Havertz has obviously filled a role for them, but I can't help but think that they still need somebody. It's not very often that you can say that a team will take 4 points off City over the season and still don't win the title. But they will be the first team to not win the title if it stays the way it is after beating City at their ground. If memory serves me right, Liverpool beat City at the Etihad, Leicester beat City at the Etihad, Chelsea beat City at the Etihad, all in the title winning reigns. Arsenal have obviously done it this season with that Martinelli deflected goal, and look to obviously come up short. I think it is a bit harsh to say that, they should have went all out attack in that second game just to get, rather than play for the draw. But then you go back to the games like the Fulham. Nobody's seen that game coming, and they got overturned in that one. Those are the kind of finer margins that we're dealing with. I pulled some stats earlier, and I remember when Liverpool finished on 97 points and City still won the league. Liverpool finished on 92 points and City still won the league. Arsenal, or if they win all their remaining games, are going to potentially finish on 89 points and still not win the league. So this is not a story about Arsenal. This is a story about City. In reality, this is what City do. They do it to all the teams. I think it's just Arsenal are just the victim this season if it stays that way.
Absolutely, Johnny. Just come in there on Arsenal. Anything you'd add to that? I've got to agree with Jamie about Declan Rice. I think that I was one that very much. I'll be honest. I thought he was. Sometimes he's slightly overrated. I think there was a lot of hype about him, especially at West Ham. I'm watching him, and I'm like, he's a good player, but hearing the shouts of world class and things like that, I think it was a little bit over the top. But I do think he's made a massive difference to this Arsenal team, and I think he was their best player at the weekend. And I think that if they can build that midfield, around him and Odegaard, it's definitely an exciting one for Arsenal.
Yeah. I agree. I think having any noise against Arsenal, I think, is unfair. Kind of just to try and abbreviate it, that the margin is really, really small, and they have improved this season. They have not faded away. They've not went into the night kind of thing. They have kept pushing, they're sweeping teams aside, and they've continued to do that for a while. They had a tiny wee wobble, slightly longer than City's, which right now is probably what's going to cost them the title. But it's going to be incredibly close when we get to the back end. But still think they're going to fall just short, but they have improved. Now next season they need to just basically do the same again and hope they can take it that final stage. They're going in the right direction. I like Declan Rice. I think he's a good player. I'm going to go world class just yet. For me, you have to dip your toes in different environments where you can kind of get that flag, or maybe an international kind of accolade. But no, I think Arsenal have been really good, mate. I really like Martin Odegaard. I think Saka, Martinelli, these kind of players take a lot of plaudits, but he's the one setting them up. He's the one pulling the strings. He keeps that midfield ticking. Declan Rice does the grunt kind of work, but all the beautiful side of the game, if you want to call it, comes through Odegaard. But no, mate, listen, they're a good side. They have a lot of good players. I agree they need a striker. We've been saying that for Christ, couldn't tell you how long, but we're talking seasons upon seasons. They need a decent striker. I think that's the next stage for them. They should have done it prior to this season, but they've rolled the dice and they've came incredibly close. I mean, it could still change. Stranger things have happened. I just can't see it happening.
Johnny, I'll stay with you. Sorry about that noise, people. Johnny, I'll stay with you for Man City then. 5-1 win at the weekend. The game was pretty much over quite early with a penalty. Jamie said there about the Arsenal penalty being a little bit dubious. What did you make of this one? Do you think that was a pen? And again, Haaland banging in the goals when City need him. I think I see a stat today as well on Man City. That's it, yeah. So they're now 20 Premier League games unbeaten. We said it last week. We've said it for the last couple of weeks, but I can't see them throwing this away.
No, mate. We know this is what they do. They get to this end and they become a different machine, I suppose. But we know that's what they expect. That's why you have to be incredibly consistent before you get to that stage of the season. You have to amass every kind of point you can, or you're going to have a really hard time stopping that. I mean, is it going to last forever? Probably not. But right now, it's just the way it's been for a good few seasons now. The game itself, yeah, they absolutely dominated. Wolves were really disappointing. I didn't expect them to win, but I expected a wee bit more from them. The penalty, I mean, are you talking about the attempted murder by Nouri? Yeah, I mean, he doesn't know nothing about it, to be fair. You know, he doesn't even see Guardiola. His eyes are fixed on the ball, but he still rinses him. So, yeah, I wouldn't have any arguments with that, mate. With the meat sheet, that's 200 goals since leaving Norway. 200 club goals. It's ridiculous. I mean, he has been a bit quiet since coming back for the injury. Odd goal here and there, but at the weekend there, you can see exactly what he can do. But I think Wolves helped them at the weekend, mate. They were, as I say, they were off it. They were not great, but City were just, yeah, they never looked troubled at all, and obviously convincing win in the end. So it's what they do, mate. I think they'll continue to do that. I think the rest of the teams they play to the end of the season are probably going to get put to the sword as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Jamie, anything on that with City? Absolutely agree with Johnny there.
No, I definitely don't agree with him on the penalty. I think Guardiola kicks into Nouri, but I think more I would call it Haaland's performance. He'll obviously have the goals to cement that performance. But anybody that watched him when he was at Borussia Dortmund and Red Bull, that's the Haaland that we're used to seeing, the one that runs in behind, that sprints 20 yards to get on the end of the ball and then bangs it in. None of this tippy-tappy football at the edge of the box and him trying to get a touch when it goes in. He played at the weekend probably his best game this season in terms of stretching his legs, playing around the goal, playing around the defenders. And he's unplayable at times when he does that. It was a couple of chances that he never put away, but it was like a 30-yard run in behind the defender, and the keeper pulled off a great save. He probably had about 6 or 7. He should have had about 6 or 7 when he's in that form. That's the deadly Haaland that I enjoy watching, not the tippy-tappy on the edge of the box and hoping to get the 5-yard header in kind of thing. I know that's obviously a manufacture of how they play, but I was really impressed with Haaland at the weekend.
Yeah, I was too, mate. And he took a lot of criticism as well, madly enough. But he was a lot better at the weekend, as you said. Jamie, the next game I want to sort of touch on is the Brighton beating Aston Villa. And I know this is a Premier League show, but I think it's a chance to sort of talk about that as well. In the Conference League in Villa's semi-final, I think that played a big hand in their performance on Sunday. I thought they looked really, really leggy. Obviously, I think they took a point really that late in the game, but João Pedro steps up and scores from the rebound to get Brighton all 3 points. What did you make of Villa's performance in Europe as well? I thought this would take nothing away from Olympiacos. I think they was probably written off by a lot of English media before a ball was kicked, but quite disappointed with Villa in that one.
And you know what? See, if you take the Brighton game on itself, that's a perfect example of a European hangover. If you ever wanted to see one, people are too fit to get injured. They want to keep themselves fresh for the next round, the next leg of the semi-final. They know the back's up against the wall. They've got to do a job, and nobody wants to get injured. Nobody wants to, cause any issues. I think they expected to roll over Brighton, even with not 100%, I would say, because Brighton haven't been good of late, and Villa have been doing well and getting results. It just didn't happen. Going back to Europe, I'm I'm surprised that they gave away 4 goals in a tie. However, I think if I remember rightly, one of the first group games, I think they got turned over there was quite a lot of goals, and I think it was the Polish game. Was it the Polish game they played? I can't remember who they played in the Europa Conference in the group stages, but I'm sure there was a game where they actually gave up quite a few goals. So it's not like a one-off. It has happened before. I don't really have an answer for it because Olympiacos are not exactly world trendsetters when it comes to quarterfinals. I think this is their first ever semi-final appearance in a European trophy, from what I read. So again, this should have been an easier game for Aston Villa, but it sounds as though they made it very difficult for themselves. I didn't watch the highlights, but I mean, I think there was individual errors. I think Douglas Luiz gave away a penalty rather conspicuously, raising his hand up on the ball. All I can do is think it was just an off day that the Olympiacos just overran them. They're still in the tie. Or Villa are capable of going there and winning, 3-0 or something because of the strikers that they've got in Watkins, Diaby and Bailey. But if they concede again, then pretty much tied on, in my opinion. But the game against Brighton, as I said, European hangover, that's all it can be. That's all it's going to be. They've already wrapped up 4th place in the league. So again, I think there's an element of that to it. But yeah, I expected better from them in both games, to be fair.
Yeah, me too. Johnny, coming on to the relegation battle, big win for Nottingham Forest at the weekend. They were a goal down to Sheffield United, and I think everyone's looking at their coupons at that point and thought, oh no, but they did recover, and it was a big 3 points for Forest to pull away ever so slightly from the bottom 3. Today's news as well on Forest is they've filed with their appeal for their points deductions. But you can touch on that, Johnny. But what did you make of Forest getting that big win at the weekend?
It was a huge game for them, mate. High pressure game. They had to win that. The Sheffield side, I mean, they've got nothing to play for now, so they can relax. The shackles are off, composed, look a better team, or they can go back out and get bobbied 3-1, and we're back to Sheffield being Sheffield. There's a lot riding on it, mate. So obviously they are that close with Luton. They absolutely had to go and get 3 points. So yeah, it was only Sheffield, and they have been the whipping boys, but when you're in that situation, it's not that simple. I thought Hudson-Odoi had a great game. Probably the best player on the park. He has that ability. It just he lacks that consistency to deliver it. But when he is on it, he's a cracking player. I mean, Sheffield had a lot of chances as well. They did have a fair few breakaways. They do carry that extra threat, especially with Berreton up there. We spoke about the other week there, but he does give them that extra edge, and I think it kind of shows he's a level above everybody else in that squad. It's maybe more a reflection as to where Sheffield are, but now we've got Forest with let me remember. They've got Chelsea at home and they've got Burnley away. Luton have West Ham away and Fulham at home. So I mean, looking at it, they're quite even fixture-wise in terms of what you would class as difficulty. I mean, Chelsea maybe a wee bit more tough because Chelsea have something to play for. West Ham season's done. Fulham's is done. So Luton might have an easier time. I don't know, mate. Listen, it's incredibly close, but at the weekend, Luton drew and they get 3 points. They have to be buzzing with that, mate. They played well at the end of the day. They played well. They were worth the win.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Jamie, that brings us on to the other. Burnley get a real sore one from Newcastle at the weekend. And just Burnley, I wouldn't say they've turned a corner. That would be going a little bit too far. But their results definitely improved the last few weeks. And they'd have looked at that one, I think, again, needing a result. But to get a sore one off Newcastle, they've been playing well of late as well themselves. I think that bottom 3 is pretty much confirmed now.
Yeah, I would expect so. I think I think Burnley, they picked up 5 points in the space of 3 games before the weekend's fixture, so there was that glimmer of hope that they were now within an earshot of potentially capturing Nottingham Forest or Luton, if you like. But again, you need to do something about your home games if that's going to change. Newcastle coming to town was never going to be an easy fixture. Newcastle come with their fair share of injuries, to be fair. They've been dropping like flies left, right and centre. But I think the difference of when they played Isak and Wilson up front together, Newcastle are a different animal from an attacking sense of view. And Burnley just didn't have any answers for it, unfortunately. And Newcastle have got the ability to do that to a lot of teams. So they've done that a few times this season, just turned up and kind of smashed teams in the first half and then rode it out. I think I would never have seen Burnley trying to get anything from this game, to be fair. This was more about Newcastle and how they were going to react to the injuries that they had.
What did you make of Gordon doing another one of those dodgy dives to win a penalty?
Mate, you've been saying again. It's manufactured. It's a manufactured penalty. He does it again.
Infuriating. He just leaves his leg in there and somehow buys a penalty. And the referees falling for it every week.
I don't get it. It's as you said. It's these manufactured penalties. It's not a natural movement to kind of stiffen your body up and throw your body down, but leave your legs stiff out. That's not natural. It's almost like the diving and the theatrics isn't working as much anymore, so they've had to adapt, and they've obviously been training because there's like every club's got a player that's doing it. Just dangling that leg in there. I mean, Havertz, he's mastered it as well. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's been the pattern all season with very the same people, isn't it? And I think Anthony Gordon, Havertz have probably been two standouts when it comes to manufacturing penalties this season.
It's one of them, innit, where you watch a game, any game, a lot of games now they're doing it. They're all doing it. And we had a good discussion with Johnnie a couple of weeks ago about it. And it's something that I think maybe for next season the rules need to clamp down on it, because again, it is just interpretation.
It's so clear and obvious that, as Jamie says, it's manufactured. It's a method that they're using, and you can see it clear. And VAR is looking at these things and saying it's either not clear and obvious, or it's a stick-on penalty. I don't get it.
No, you're right. Any other games? Luton 1-1 with Everton. Jamie, it's funny because you been on for the last couple of weeks, Jamie, but we both sat here and said that probably 3 weeks ago
Everton would get dragged into it.
Yeah.
But you know what it was? It was the Liverpool game. They beat Liverpool 2-0, then they beat Brentford 1-0. They took 9 points in the space of 3 weeks. I think they beat Nottingham Forest 2-0. They beat Liverpool 2-0, and then they beat Brentford 1-0. And the moment that happens, they're done. Excuse me, they're staying up. So Everton were no longer part of the equation. Nobody's talking right now about Everton's points appeal, because it doesn't matter if they get it or not, because they're safe. Even if they take the points back off them, Everton. Everton could technically take another 10-point deduction and still be sitting outside the bottom 3. That's how poor the bottom 3 are in points. Do you know what I mean? They're 11 points ahead. So if you're Everton right now, bend the appeal, take it on the snip, get on with next season. Obviously, next season's issues is a whole different podcast. I think we might need to come back to it at the beginning of the season about the 7-7 takeover. But in terms of Everton's safety this season, it was those 3 games. The moment they took 9 points from that, and you were like, they're no longer part of the equation. It became about the conversation became all about Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, agree with that. Johnny, to finish up the show tonight, Leicester crowned champions of the Championship. They're back up. But what did you make of Ipswich coming in there as second? What a job Kieran McKenna's done in terms of back-to-back promotions. I was actually thinking yesterday, the last manager to do that, and I'm pretty sure it was Paul Lambert at Norwich, to go from League One to the Champ to the Premier League. consecutive sort of seasons. I'm pretty sure he done it.
Didn't Eddie Howe do it with Bournemouth? And I think somebody did it with Southampton, didn't they?
Did
Southampton came up.
Did Eddie Howe do it with consecutive?
I'm sure Southampton did it when they come up. They come up consecutive, I'm sure. But it was a pub quiz. I was at a pub quiz a few weeks back, and that was one of the questions. It was like, there's been like 3 managers that have done it into the Premier League. It's been like a consecutive thing. He'll be like number 4, I think it is, or something.
I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Considering look at their squad and how well they've done, but a good addition to the Premier League, Johnny. I think sometimes it's Luton this season. It's been something different.
Yeah, the good old Tracker boys. I look forward to it, mate. I was actually asked a question the other day there in one of our group chats that had Ipswich, have they had like an investment, a heavy investment prior to these 2 promotions? Just out of pure curiosity, but nobody really seemed to know. I don't know if that's the case, if that's where they've got like the lease of life, or if it's just one of those fairy tales. But I mean, I hope we do well, mate. I said the same about Luton. I'd still like to see them stay up. I'd love to see them make it. And fair play to Leicester as well, because when I was asked pre-season about coming up, I didn't think they would do it. I thought it would take them a few seasons to get their stuff back together. But they held on to, I know they lost some players, but they held on to a good chunk of that squad. And it's been really close, the championship. There's not been a hell of a lot in it, especially the top 3. It was more so Leeds kind of shit in the bed at the back end. But no, I mean, Leicester have done well, and Ipswich have kept right up with them. I mean, it's only a point. It's only a point, isn't it? So it'll be interesting to see how they get on, mate, definitely.
Just Johnny, sorry. Who do you think will come up for the playoffs, Johnny, to finish up?
Who do I think will come up for the playoffs?
Yeah.
Leeds,
yeah?
Yeah. I think Southampton will bottle it, mate. I think they probably should have won the league if they kept the form they had going, but they kind of had a wobble as well. But I mean, I said it before, mate, the Championship is such a meat grinder, such a tough league to get back out of. That's why I'm saying so much, a big well done to Leicester. It's not easy to do that. But yeah, I'd fancy Leeds, mate.
Nice one. And Jamie, what do you make of Ipswich coming up, upsetting the odds, and who do you think will go up for the playoffs?
I hope Southampton go up because dirty Leeds. Forget them. But the story of the weekend, I kind of like. I really like this, and it's the lad that's up top for Leicester, Fatawa. So they did a £750,000 loan deal with Sporting Lisbon because he wasn't getting the game with them. And as part of the deal, if they got promoted to the Premier League, they would have to pay a flat fee of something like that. It was like £14.5 million, which Leicester have now been triggered because obviously they've been promoted. But I think there's something like a 50% sell-on clause from his original African team. Now, to put it in perspective, this African team, their highest transfer ever is something like £25,000, and they've now just hit a windfall of £7.5 million because of this this sell-on clause that was inserted.
That was
they're the stories I like. They're the stories I love, like hearing things like that. They completely change. That will completely change how that club is run, and so forth. I think they're brilliant. Leicester by far should have been one of the 2 teams that come up because you would expect it because of the pedigree they've got, and especially when they're still playing a 46-year-old bloody Jamie Vardy and he's still banging the goals in. However, I do question whether he can take that into the Premier League again, because if anything, the Premier League's even more ruthless than what it was 2 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Excuse me. They're still running with what you would arguably say are probably some of the Premier League rejects going down into the team, and I'm talking about the centre backs. Do you remember they got the 2 lads from Southampton? Was it Vestergaard and I forget the name of the other lad. Was it Wout Vey? He did never cover himself and gloated the last time he was in the Premier League. I remember he scored the double own goal against Liverpool. To highlight too. They've got the young lads from Tottenham, who didn't get a run of games. I forget his name. But
Harry's there as well.
Yeah, Harry Shooter's obviously the fucking giant of a lad, isn't he? So it's mad. I would expect Leicester to get through, but I think Ipswich for me have been brilliant. Everybody, including myself, expected Ipswich to fall away on multiple occasions. But how he's got them playing is like that proper never say die attitude. I think they've been brilliant. I think they'll be a good addition. The one thing I heard it on one of the, I think it was on TalkSport, and they were talking about how they run their financial fair play. Is they actually post their finances or their strategy at the beginning of every season and say, this is how much we're going to spend here, this is how much we're going to spend here. Full transparency on how the business runs. So there is no deals under the table and all that kind of stuff. And they've obviously got a lot of praises from journalists and the powers that be of how to get a lot of plaudits for how to run a club successfully is probably the best way to put it. I'd be disappointed to see somebody come in and steal the manager, because he's obviously done something with them, and you want to see him take it into the Premier League and see how he fares. I do think they'll struggle purely for the fact that they're not in a position to sign, big transfer fees. I think, is it Kiefer Moore that's up top for them at the moment? Again, so these are all people that are not necessarily doing it at Premier League teams already. So you do worry for them, but it's a good story to tell, and that you want them there to tell that story. I do think Leeds are proper shit in the bed, and I have no qualms about whether they come up or down. I think Southampton went to Leeds recently and beat them. So they've got the experience to do that. Outside of that, I think who the other teams is West Brom and Norwich. I think Leeds and Southampton are probably too good for those two teams, is my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It'd be another, can't beat the playoffs, can you? Especially I like watching the Championship ones towards the end of the season. It's always.
What about you, Mason? Who do you fancy to come up?
I think Leeds are gone. I'd like Leeds to come up. But I'll probably go Southampton.
Okay.
Probably go. And Russell Martin, I don't know why I'm backing Russell Martin.
You'll get this on your TikTok when I'm writing you to
Yeah, that's going to come backfire. But I don't know why Southampton I'd go with, I think. But gents, that's us for tonight. Johnny, thanks for coming tonight, mate.
Thank you, mate. And Jamie, absolute pleasure as always. Look forward to next week.
Lovely stuff. And Jamie, thanks as always.
Mason, thanks very much for having me back on. And I would like to just say that if Man United are looking for a new manager, I hear there's one David Moyes looking for a job.
They can do a lot worse, I'll tell you that. Gareth Southgate, I'm just seeing there on my phone.
Mate, that would make my day. That would make my day so much.
I can see it happening. That's the scary thing. But listeners, thanks as always. And please just get your questions and comments in for us. We always like more stuff to chat about. So make sure you do that. And we'll be back next week. Take care.